Mauritius. Coordinates: 20 degrees 12 S 57 degrees 30 E, 20.2 degrees south 57.5 degrees east, minus 20.2, 57.5. Mauritius, /Maurice, listen, French, Maurice, Creole, Maurice, officially the Republic of Mauritius, French, République de Maurice, Creole, Repiblik Moris, is an island nation in the Indian Ocean about 2,000 kilometers, 1,200 miles, off the southeast coast of the African continent. The country includes the islands of Mauritius and Rodrigues, 560 kilometers, 350 miles, east of Mauritius, and the outer islands of Agaléga and St. The islands of Mauritius and Rodrigues form part of the Mascarene Islands, along with nearby Réunion, a French overseas department. The area of the country is 2,040 square kilometers, 790 square miles. The capital and largest city is Port Louis. Formerly a Dutch colony, 1638 to 1710, and a French colony, renamed Isle de France, 1715 to 1810, Mauritius became a British colonial possession in 1810 and remained so until 1968, the year in which it attained independence. The British Crown colony of Mauritius once included the current territories of Mauritius, Rodrigues, the outer islands of Agaléga, St. Brandon, Chagos Archipelago, and Seychelles. The Mauritian territories gradually devolved with the creation of a separate colony of Seychelles in 1903 and the excision of the Chagos Archipelago in 1965. The sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago was disputed between Mauritius and the United Kingdom. The UK excised the archipelago from Mauritian territory in 1965, 3 years prior to Mauritian independence. The UK gradually depopulated the archipelago's local population and leased its biggest island, Diego Garcia, to the United States. Access to the Chagos Archipelago is prohibited to casual tourists, the media, and its former inhabitants. In February 2019, in an advisory opinion given by the International Court of Justice on this dispute, the UK was ordered to hand back the Chagos Islands to Mauritius as rapidly as possible. Mauritius also claims sovereignty over Tromelin Island from France. The people of Mauritius are multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multicultural and multilingual. The island's government is closely modeled on the Westminster parliamentary system, and Mauritius is highly ranked for democracy and for economic and political freedom. The Human Development Index of Mauritius is the highest in Africa. Mauritius is ranked as the most competitive and one of the most developed economies in the African region. The main pillars of the Mauritian economy are manufacturing, financial services, tourism, and information and communications technology. Mauritius is a welfare state. The government provides free universal healthcare, free education up to tertiary level and free public transport for students, senior citizens, and the disabled. Along with the other Mascarene Islands, Mauritius is known for its varied flora and fauna, with many species endemic to the island. The island was the only known home of the dodo, which, along with several other avian species, was made extinct by human activities relatively shortly after the island's settlement. Etymology. The first historical evidence of the existence of an island now known as Mauritius is on a map produced by the Italian cartographer Alberto Contino in 1502. From this, it appears that Mauritius was first named Dina Arobi around 975 by Arab sailors, the first people to visit the island. In 1507, Portuguese sailors visited the uninhabited island. The island appears with the Portuguese name Cerne on early Portuguese maps, probably from the name of a ship in the 1507 expedition. Another Portuguese sailor, Dom Pedro Mascarenhas, gave the name Mascarenes to the archipelago. In 1598, a Dutch squadron under Admiral Wybrand van Warwick landed at Grand Port and named the island Mauritius, in honor of Prince Maurice van Nassau, stateholder of the Dutch Republic. Later the island became a French colony and was renamed Isle de France. On December 3, 1810, the French surrendered the island to Great Britain during the Napoleonic Wars. Under British rule, the island's name reverted to Mauritius listen. Mauritius is also commonly known as Maurice, pronounced, and Ile Maurice in French, Maurice, pronounced, in Mauritian Creole. History. Early history. The island of Mauritius was uninhabited before its first recorded visit during the Middle Ages by Arab sailors, who named it Dina Arobi. In 1507, Portuguese sailors came to the uninhabited island and established a visiting base. Diogo Fernandes Pereira, a Portuguese navigator, was the first European known to land in Mauritius. He named the island Ilha do Cerne, Island of Cerne. The Portuguese did not stay long as they were not interested in these islands. Dutch Mauritius, 1638 to 1710. In 1598 a Dutch squadron under Admiral Wybrand van Warwick landed at Grand Port and named the island Mauritius after Prince Maurice of Nassau, Dutch, Maurits van Nassau, of the Dutch Republic. The Dutch inhabited the island in 1638, from which they exploited ebony trees and introduced sugarcane, domestic animals and deer. It was from here that Dutch navigator Abel Tasman set out to discover the western part of Australia. The first Dutch settlement lasted 20 years. Several attempts were subsequently made, but the settlements never developed enough to produce dividends, causing the Dutch to abandon Mauritius in 1710. French Mauritius, 1715 to 1810. France, which already controlled neighboring Ile Bourbon, now Réunion, took control of Mauritius in 1715 and renamed it Isle de France. In 1723, the Code Noir was established to categorize one group of human beings as goods, in order for the owner of these goods to be able to obtain insurance money and compensation in case of loss of his goods. The 1735 arrival of French Governor Bertrand François Mahé de la Bourdonnais coincided with development of a prosperous economy based on sugar production. Mahé de la Bourdonnais established Port Louis as a naval base and a shipbuilding center. Under his governorship, numerous buildings were erected, a number of which are still standing. These include part of Government House, the Château de Montplaisir, and the Line Barracks, the headquarters of the police force. The island was under the administration of the French East India Company, which maintained its presence until 1767. From 1767 to 1810, except for a brief period during the French Revolution when the inhabitants set up a government virtually independent of France, the island was controlled by officials appointed by the French government. Jacques-Henri Bernardin de Saint-Pierre lived on the island from 1768 to 1771, then went back to France, where he wrote Paulette Virginie, a love story, which made the Isle de France famous wherever the French language was spoken. Two famous French governors were the Vicomte de Souillac, who constructed the Chelsea in Port Louis and encouraged farmers to settle in the district of Savane, and Antoine Bruni d'Entrecasteaux, who saw to it that the French in the Indian Ocean should have their headquarters in Mauritius instead of Pondicherry in India. Charles Mathieu Isidore Deakin was a successful general in the French Revolutionary Wars and, in some ways, a rival of Napoleon I. He ruled as governor of Isle de France and Réunion from 1803 to 1810. British naval cartographer and explorer Matthew Flinders was arrested and detained by General Deakin on the island, in contravention of an order from Napoleon. During the Napoleonic Wars, Mauritius became a base from which French corsairs organized successful raids on British commercial ships. The raids continued until 1810, when a Royal Navy expedition led by Commodore Josias Rowley, RN, an Anglo-Irish aristocrat, was sent to capture the island. Despite winning the Battle of Grand Port, the only French naval victory over the British during these wars, the French could not prevent the British from landing at Cap Malheureux 3 months later. They formally surrendered the island on the 5th day of the invasion, December 3, 1810, on terms allowing settlers to keep their land and property and to use the French language and law of France in criminal and civil matters. Under British rule, the island's name reverted to Mauritius. British Mauritius, 1810 to 1968. The British administration, which began with Sir Robert Farquhar as governor, led to rapid social and economic changes. However, it was tainted by the Rat-Side-Atane episode. Rat-Side-Atane, nephew of King Radama of Madagascar, was brought to Mauritius as a political prisoner. He managed to escape from prison and plotted a rebellion that would free the island's slaves. He was betrayed by an associate and was caught by the British forces, summarily judged, and condemned to death. He was beheaded at Plaine Verte on April 15, 1822, and his head was displayed as a deterrent against future uprisings among the slaves. In 1832, Adrien d'Epinay launched the first Mauritian newspaper, Le Cernin, which was not controlled by the government. In the same year, there was a move by the Procureur General to abolish slavery without compensation to the slave owners. This gave rise to discontent, and, to check an eventual rebellion, the government ordered all the inhabitants to surrender their arms. Furthermore, a stone fortress, Fort Adelaide, was built on a hill, now known as the Citadel Hill, in the center of Port Louis to quell any uprising. Slavery was abolished in 1835, and the planters ultimately received £2 million in compensation for the loss of their slaves who had been imported from Africa and Madagascar during the French occupation. The abolition of slavery had important impacts on Mauritius's society, economy and population. The planters brought a large number of indentured laborers from India to work in the sugarcane fields. Between 1834 and 1921, around 500,000 indentured laborers were present on the island. They worked on sugar estates, factories, in transport and on construction sites. Additionally, the British brought 8,740 Indian soldiers to the island. Apravasi Ghat, in the bay at Port Louis and now a UNESCO site, was the first British colony to serve as a major reception centre for indentured servants. An important figure of the 19th century was Rémy Ollier, a journalist of mixed origin. In 1828, the colour bar was officially abolished in Mauritius, but British governors gave little power to coloured persons, and appointed only whites as leading officials. Rémy Ollier petitioned to Queen Victoria to allow coloureds in the Council of Government, and this became possible a few years later. He also made Port Louis become a municipality so that the citizens could administer the town through their own elected representatives. Data Street has been named after him in Port Louis, and his bust was erected in the Jardin de la Campagne in 1906. In 1885 a new constitution was introduced to Mauritius. It created elected positions on the governing council, but the franchise was restricted mainly to the French and Creole classes. The laborers brought from India were not always fairly treated, and a German, Adolf von Plevitz, made himself the unofficial protector of these immigrants. He mixed with many of the laborers, and in 1871 helped them to write a petition which was sent to Governor Gordon. A commission was appointed to look into the complaints made by the Indian immigrants, and in 1872 two lawyers, appointed by the British Crown, were sent from England to make an inquiry. This Royal Commission recommended several measures that would affect the lives of Indian laborers during the next 50 years. In November 1901, Mahatma Gandhi visited Mauritius, on his way from South Africa to India. He stayed on the island for 2 weeks, and urged the Indo-Mauritian community to take an interest in education and to play a more active role in politics. Back in India, he sent over a young lawyer, Manilal Doctor, to improve the plight of the Indo-Mauritians. During the same year, faster links were established with the island of Rodrigues thanks to the wireless. In 1903, motorcars were introduced in Mauritius, and in 1910 the first taxis, operated by Joseph Mervyn, came into service. The electrification of Port Louis took place in 1909, and in the same decade the Mauritius Hydroelectric Company, managed by the Achia brothers, was authorized to provide power to the towns of Upper Plains Wilhelms. The 1910s were a period of political agitation. The rising middle class, made up of doctors, lawyers, and teachers, began to challenge the political power of the sugarcane landowners. Dr. Eugène Laurent, mayor of Port Louis, was the leader of this new group. His party, Action Libérale, demanded that more people should be allowed to vote in the elections. Action Libérale was opposed by the Parti de l'Ordre, led by Henri Leclésio, the most influential of the sugar magnates. In 1911 there were riots in Port Louis due to a false rumor that Dr. Eugène Laurent had been murdered by the oligarchs in Curepipe. Shops and offices were damaged in the capital, and one person was killed. In the same year, 1911, the first public cinema shows took place in Curepipe, and, in the same town, a stone building was erected to house the Royal College. In 1912, a wider telephone network came into service, and it was used by the government, business firms, and a few private households. World War I broke out in August 1914. Many Mauritians volunteered to fight in Europe against the Germans and in Mesopotamia against the Turks. But the war affected Mauritius much less than the wars of the 18th century. On the contrary, the 1914 to 1918 war was a period of great prosperity because of a boom in sugar prices. In 1919 the Mauritius Sugar Syndicate came into being, and it included 70% of all sugar producers. The 1920s saw the rise of a retrocessionism movement which favored the retrocession of Mauritius to France. The movement rapidly collapsed because none of the candidates who wanted Mauritius to be given back to France was elected in the 1921 elections. Due to the post-war recession, there was a sharp drop in sugar prices. Many sugar estates closed down, and it marked the end of an era for the sugar magnates who had not only controlled the economy, but also the political life of the country. Raoul Rivet, the editor of Le Mauricien newspaper, campaigned for a revision of the constitution that would give the emerging middle class a greater role in the running of the country. The principles of Arya Samaj began to infiltrate the Hindu community, who clamored for more social justice. The 1930s saw the birth of the Labour Party, launched by Dr. Maurice Carré. Emmanuel Anquetil rallied the urban workers while Pandit Sahadio concentrated on the rural working class. The Uba riots of 1937 resulted in reforms by the local British government that improved labour conditions and led to the UN banning of labour unions. Labour Day was celebrated for the first time in 1938. More than 30,000 workers sacrificed a day's wage and came from all over the island to attend a giant meeting at the Champ de Mars. At the outbreak of World War II in 1939, many Mauritians volunteered to serve under the British flag in Africa and the Near East, fighting against the German and Italian armies. Some went to England to become pilots and ground staff in the Royal Air Force. Mauritius was never really threatened, but several British ships were sunk outside Port Louis by German submarines in 1943. During World War II, conditions were hard in the country, the prices of commodities doubled, but the salaries of workers increased only by 10 to 20%. There was civil unrest, and the colonial government crushed all trade union activities. However, the laborers of Bellevue Herald Sugar Estate went on strike on September 27, 1943. Police officers eventually fired on the crowd, and killed 3 laborers including a boy of 10 and a pregnant woman, and Jolly Coupon. The first general elections were held on August 9, 1948 and were won by the Labour Party. This party, led by Guy Rosamont, bettered its position in 1953, and, on the strength of the election results, demanded universal suffrage. Constitutional conferences were held in London in 1955 and 1957, and the ministerial system was introduced. Voting took place for the first time on the basis of universal adult suffrage on March 9, 1959. The general election was again won by the Labour Party, led this time by Sir Siwusagaram Ghulam. A constitutional review conference was held in London in 1961, and a programme of further constitutional advance was established. The 1963 election was won by the Labour Party and its allies. The Colonial Office noted that politics of a communal nature was gaining ground in Mauritius and that the choice of candidates, by parties, and the voting behaviour of electors were governed by ethnic and caste considerations. Around that time, 2 eminent British academics, Richard Titmuss and James Mead, published a report of the island's social problems caused by overpopulation and the monoculture of sugar cane. This led to an intense campaign to halt the population explosion, and the decade registered a sharp decline in population growth. Independence, since 1968. At the Lancaster Conference of 1965, it became clear that Britain wanted to relieve itself of the colony of Mauritius. In 1959, Harold Macmillan had made his famous Winds of Change speech where he acknowledged that the best option for Britain was to give complete independence to its colonies. Thus, since the late 50s, the way was paved for independence. Later in 1965, after the Lancaster Conference, the Chagos Archipelago was excised from the territory of Mauritius to form the British Indian Ocean Territory, BIOT. A general election took place on August 7, 1967, and the Labour Party and its 2 allies obtained the majority of seats. In January 1968, 6 weeks before the declaration of independence, the 1968 Mauritian riots occurred in Port Louis, leading to the deaths of 25 people. Mauritius adopted a new constitution and independence was proclaimed on March 12, 1968. Sir Siwusagaram Ghulam became the first Prime Minister of an independent Mauritius, with Queen Elizabeth II remaining head of state as Queen of Mauritius. In 1969, the opposition party Mauritian Militant Movement, MMM, led by Paul Béranger, was founded. Later in 1971, the MMM, backed by unions, called a series of strikes in the port which caused a state of emergency in the country. The coalition government of the Labour Party and the PMSD, Parti Mauricien Social Democrate, reacted by curtailing civil liberties and curbing freedom of the press. 2 unsuccessful assassination attempts were made against Paul Béranger. The second one led to the death of Azorat El Aid, a dock worker and activist, on November 25, 1971. General elections were postponed and public meetings were prohibited. Members of the MMM, including Paul Béranger, were imprisoned on December 23, 1971. The MMM leader was released a year later. In May 1975, A student revolt that started at the University of Mauritius swept across the country. The students were unsatisfied with an education system that did not meet their aspirations and gave limited prospects for future employment. On 20th of May, thousands of students tried to enter Port Louis over the Grand River Northwest Bridge and clashed with police. An Act of Parliament was passed on December 16, 1975 to extend the right to vote to 18-year-olds. This was seen as an attempt to appease the frustration of the younger generation. The next general election took place on December 20, 1976. The Labour Party won 28 seats out of 62, but Prime Minister Sir Siwusagar Ramgoolam managed to remain in office, with a 2-seat majority, after striking an alliance with the PMSD of Gaëtan Duval. In 1982 an MMM government led by Prime Minister Anirudh Jugnauth and Paul Béranger as Minister of Finance was elected. However, ideological and personality differences emerged within the MMM leadership. The power struggle between Béranger and Jugnauth peaked in March 1983. Jugnauth traveled to New Delhi to attend a non-aligned movement summit. On his return, Béranger proposed constitutional changes that would strip power from the Prime Minister. At Jugnauth's request, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi of India planned an armed intervention involving the Indian Navy and Indian Army to prevent a coup under the code name Operation Lal Dora. The MMM government split up 9 months after the June 1982 election. According to an Information Ministry official, the 9 months was a socialist experiment. The new MSM party, led by Anirudh Jugnauth, was elected in 1983. Gaëtan Duval became the vice prime minister. Throughout the decade, Anirudh Jugnauth ruled the country with the help of the PMSD and the Labour Party. That period saw growth in the EPZ, export processing zone, sector. Industrialization began to spread to villages as well, and attracted young workers from all ethnic communities. As a result, the sugar industry began to lose its hold on the economy. Large retail chains began opening stores in 1985 and offered credit facilities to low-income earners, thus allowing them to afford basic household appliances. There was also a boom in the tourism industry, and new hotels sprang up throughout the island. In 1989 the stock exchange opened its doors, and in 1992 the Freeport began operation. In 1990, the Prime Minister lost the vote on changing the constitution to make the country a republic with Béranger as president. Republic, since 1992. On March 12, 1992, 24 years after independence, Mauritius was proclaimed a republic within the Commonwealth of Nations. The last Governor-General, Sir Veerasammy Ringadoo, became the first president. This was under a transitional arrangement, in which he was replaced by Kasam Uteam later that year. Political power remained with the Prime Minister. Despite an improvement in the economy, which coincided with a fall in the price of petrol and a favorable dollar exchange rate, the government did not enjoy full popularity. As early as 1984, there was discontent. Through the Newspapers and Periodicals Amendment Act, the government tried to make every newspaper provide a bank guarantee of ₹500,000. 43 journalists protested by participating in a public demonstration in Port Louis, in front of Parliament. They were arrested and freed on bail. This caused a public outcry and the government had to review its policy. There was also dissatisfaction in the education sector. There were not enough high-quality secondary colleges to answer the growing demand of primary school leavers who had got through their CPE, Certificate of Primary Education. In 1991, a master plan for education failed to get national support and contributed to the government's downfall. Naveen Ramgoolam was elected as Prime Minister in 1995. In February 1999, the country experienced a brief period of civil unrest. President Kasam Uteam and Cardinal Jean Margit toured the country and, after 4 days of turmoil, calm was restored. A commission of inquiry was set up to investigate the root causes of the social disturbance. The resulting report delved into the cause of poverty and qualified many tenacious beliefs as perceptions. Anirudh Jugnauth of the MSM returned to power in 2000 after making an alliance with the MMM. In 2002, the island of Rodrigues became an autonomous entity within the Republic and was thus able to elect its own representatives to administer the island. In 2003, the Prime Ministership was transferred to Paul Béranger of the MMM, and Anirudh Jugnauth went to Rodrigues to serve as president. Béranger was the first Franco-Mauritian premier in the country's history. In 2005, Naveen Ramgoolam and the Labour Party returned to power. Ramgoolam lost power in 2014. He was succeeded by Anirudh Jugnauth. On January 21, 2017, Anirudh Jugnauth announced that in 2 days' time he would resign in favor of his son, Finance Minister Pravin Jugnauth, who would assume the office of Prime Minister. The transition took place as planned on January 23, 2017. In 2018, Mauritian President Amina Gurib Fakim, the only erstwhile female head of state in the African Union, resigned over a financial scandal. The current acting president is Barlan Viapuri. Geography. The total land area of the country is 2,040 square kilometers, 790 square miles. It is the 170th largest nation in the world by size. The Republic of Mauritius is constituted of the main island of Mauritius and several outlying islands. The nation's exclusive economic zone, EEZ, covers about 2.3 million square kilometers, 890,000 square miles, of the Indian Ocean, including approximately 400,000 square kilometers, 150,000 square miles, jointly managed with the Seychelles. Mauritius Island. Mauritius is 2,000 kilometers, 1,200 miles, off the southeast coast of Africa, between latitudes 19 degrees and 58.8 minutes and 20 degrees and 31.7 minutes south and longitudes 57 degrees and 18.0 minutes and 57 degrees and 46.5 minutes east. It is 65 kilometers, 40 miles, long and 45 kilometers, 30 miles, wide. Its land area is 1,864.8 square kilometers, 720.0 square miles. The island is surrounded by more than 150 kilometers, 100 miles, of white sandy beaches, and the lagoons are protected from the open sea by the world's third largest coral reef, which surrounds the island. Just off the Mauritian coast lie some 49 uninhabited islands and islets, several used as natural reserves for endangered species. The island of Mauritius is relatively young geologically, having been created by volcanic activity some 8 million years ago. Together with St. Brandon, Réunion, and Rodrigues, the island is part of the Mascarene Islands. These islands emerged as a result of gigantic underwater volcanic eruptions that happened thousands of kilometers to the east of the continental block made up of Africa and Madagascar. They are no longer volcanically active and the hotspot now rests under Réunion Island. Mauritius is encircled by a broken ring of mountain ranges, varying in height from 300 to 800 meters, 1,000 to 2,600 feet, above sea level. The land rises from coastal plains to a central plateau where it reaches a height of 670 meters, 2,200 feet. The highest peak is in the southwest, Piton de la Petite Rivière Noire at 828 meters, 2,717 feet. Streams and rivers speckle the island, many formed in the cracks created by lava flows. Rodrigues Island. The autonomous island of Rodrigues is located 560 kilometers, 350 miles, to the east of Mauritius. It has an area 108 square kilometers, 42 square miles. Rodrigues is a volcanic island rising from a ridge along the edge of the Mascarene Plateau. The island is hilly with a central spine culminating in the highest peak, Mount Limon at 398 meters, 1,306 feet. The island also has a coral reef and extensive limestone deposits. Chagos Archipelago. The Chagos Archipelago is composed of atolls and islands, and is located approximately 2,200 kilometers northeast of the main island of Mauritius. To the north of the Chagos Archipelago are Paros Banjos, Salomon Islands and Nelson's Island. To the southwest are the Three Brothers, Eagle Islands, Egmont Islands, and Danger Island. Diego Garcia is in the southeast of the archipelago. Agaléga Islands. The twin islands of Agaléga are located some 1,000 kilometers, 620 miles, to the north of Mauritius. Its north island is 12.5 kilometers, 7.8 miles, long and 1.5 kilometers, 0.9 miles, wide, while its south island is 7 kilometers, 4.3 miles, long and 4.5 kilometers, 2.8 miles, wide. The total area of both islands is 26 square kilometers, 10 square miles. Tromelin. Tromelin Island lies 430 kilometers northeast of Mauritius. Mauritius claims sovereignty over Tromelin Island, as does France. The dispute arises from the question of whether the dependencies mentioned in the Treaty of Paris included Tromelin, since some of the islands such as Agaléga, St. Brandon, Rodrigues and Tromelin were not specifically mentioned. In 1990, In view of the cordial relations between France and Mauritius, a common agreement was reached for France to put up a meteorological station on Tromelin. In June 1990, following the official visit of President François Mitterrand to Mauritius, a decision was taken to co-manage Tromelin by Mauritius and France. 10 years later, President Nicolas Sarkozy and Prime Minister Naveen Ramgoolam again discussed the issue and the co-management agreement was signed and ratified in June 2010. In January 2017, the French government backed away from the co-management treaty. It was removed from the agenda of the French National Assembly. St. Brandon. St. Brandon, also known as Chagos Archipelago, is located 402 kilometers, 250 miles, northeast of Mauritius Island. The archipelago consists of 16 islands and islets. Districts of Mauritius Island. Mauritius is subdivided into 9 districts. They consist of different cities, towns and villages. Territorial dispute. Chagos Archipelago. Mauritius has long sought sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago, located 1,287 kilometers, 800 miles, to the northeast. Chagos was administratively part of Mauritius from the 18th century when the French first settled the islands. All of the islands forming part of the French colonial territory of Ile-de-France, as Mauritius was then known, were ceded to the British in 1810 under the Act of Capitulation signed between the two powers. In 1965, 3 years before the independence of Mauritius, the United Kingdom split the Chagos Archipelago from Mauritius and the islands of Aldabra, Farquhar and Déroche from the Seychelles to form the British Indian Ocean Territory, BIOT. The islands were formally established as an overseas territory of the United Kingdom on November 8, 1965. On June 23, 1976, Aldabra, Farquhar and Déroche were returned to Seychelles as a result of its attaining independence. The BIO now comprises the Chagos Archipelago only. The UK leased the main island of the archipelago Diego Garcia to the United States under a 50-year lease to establish a military base. In 2016, Britain unilaterally extended the lease to the US till 2036. Mauritius has repeatedly asserted that the separation of its territories is a violation of United Nations resolutions banning the dismemberment of colonial territories before independence and claims that the Chagos Archipelago, including Diego Garcia, forms an integral part of the territory of Mauritius under both Mauritian law and international law. After initially denying that the islands were inhabited, British officials forcibly expelled to the mainland approximately 2,000 Chagosans who had lived on those islands for a century. The UK threatened the Chagosans and choked their dogs to death with vehicles' fumes being pumped into building, while others were shot or poisoned. At the United Nations and in statements to its parliament, the UK pretended that there was no permanent population in the Chagos Archipelago and described the population as mere contract labourers who were relocated. Since 1971, only the atoll of Diego Garcia is inhabited, home to some 3,000 UK and US military and civilian contracted personnel. Chagosans have since engaged in activism to return to the archipelago, claiming that their forced expulsion and dispossession were illegal. Permanent Court of Arbitration. On December 20, 2010, Mauritius initiated proceedings against the United Kingdom under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, to challenge the legality of the Chagos Marine Protected Area, MPA, which the UK purported to declare around the Chagos Archipelago in April 2010. The dispute was arbitrated by the Permanent Court of Arbitration. The sovereignty of Mauritius was explicitly recognized by 2 of the arbitrators and denied by none of the other 3. 3 members of the tribunal found that they did not have jurisdiction to rule on that question. They expressed no view as to which of the 2 states has sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago. Tribunal judges Rudiger Wolfram and James Kaepke held that the tribunal did have jurisdiction to decide this question, and concluded that UK does not have sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago. They found that the tribunal's decision determined that UK's undertaking to return the Chagos Archipelago to Mauritius gives Mauritius an interest in significant decisions that bear upon possible future uses of the archipelago. The result of the tribunal's decision is that it is now open to the parties to enter into the negotiations that the tribunal would have expected prior to the proclamation of the MPA, with a view to achieving a mutually satisfactory arrangement for protecting the marine environment, to the extent necessary under a sovereignty umbrella. International Court of Justice. Amendment of Exclusion Clause by UK. In 2004, following the decision of the British government to promulgate the British Indian Ocean Territory Order, which prohibited the Chagosans from remaining on the islands without express authorization. Mauritius contemplated having recourse to the International Court of Justice to finally and conclusively settle the dispute. However, Article 36 of the International Court of Justice statute provides that it is the option of the state whether it wishes to subject itself to the court's jurisdiction. Where the state chooses to be so bound, it may also restrict or limit the jurisdiction of the court in a number of ways. The UK's clause deposited at the court excluded, amongst other things, the jurisdiction of the court with regard to any disputes with the government of any country which is a member of the Commonwealth with regard to situations or facts existing before January 1, 1969. The temporal limitation of January 1, 1969 was inserted to exclude all disputes arising during decolonization. The effect of the British exclusionary clause would thus have prevented Mauritius from resorting to the court on the Chagos dispute, because it is a member of the Commonwealth. Before Mauritius even left the Commonwealth, the United Kingdom quickly amended its exclusion clause to the court's jurisdiction, to exclude any disputes between itself, Commonwealth states and former Commonwealth states, therefore quashing any Mauritian hopes to ever have recourse to the contentious jurisdiction of the court, even if it left the Commonwealth. Advisory opinion. On June 22, 2017, by margin of 94 to 15 countries, the UN General Assembly asked the International Court of Justice to give an advisory opinion on the separation of the Chagos Archipelago from Mauritius before the country's independence in the 1960s. In September 2018, the International Court of Justice began hearings on the case. 17 countries have argued in favor of Mauritius. The UK apologized for the shameful way islanders were evicted from the Chagos Archipelago but were insistent that Mauritius was wrong to bring the dispute over sovereignty of the strategic atoll group to the United Nations highest court. The UK and its allies argued that this matter should not be decided by the court but should be resolved through bilateral negotiations, while bilateral discussions with Mauritius have been unfruitful over the past 50 years. On February 25, 2019, the judges of the International Court of Justice by 13 votes to 1 stated that the United Kingdom is under an obligation to bring to an end its administration of the Chagos Archipelago as rapidly as possible. Only the American Judge Joan Donoghue voted in favor of the UK. The president of the court, Abdul Qawi Ahmed Yusuf, said the detachment of the Chagos Archipelago in 1965 from Mauritius had not been based on a free and genuine expression of the people concerned. This continued administration constitutes a wrongful act. He added the UK has an obligation to bring to an end its administration of the Chagos Archipelago as rapidly as possible and that all member states must cooperate with the United Nations to complete the decolonization of Mauritius. On May 1, 2019, the UK Foreign Office Minister Alan Duncan stated that Mauritius has never held sovereignty over the archipelago and the UK does not recognise its claim. He stated that the ruling was merely an advisory opinion and not a legally binding judgment. Jeremy Corbyn wrote to the UK PM condemning her decision to defy a ruling of the UN's principal court which concluded that Britain should hand back the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. He expressed his concern that the UK government appears ready to disregard international law and ignore a ruling of the International Court and the right of the Chagosans to return to their homes. On May 22, 2019, the United Nations General Assembly debated and adopted a resolution that affirmed that the Chagos Archipelago, which has been occupied by the UK for more than 50 years, forms an integral part of the territory of Mauritius. The resolution gives effect to an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, ICJ, demanded that the UK withdraw its colonial administration, unconditionally within a period of no more than 6 months. 116 states voted in favour of the resolution, 55 abstained and only Australia, Hungary, Israel and Maldives supported the UK and US. During the debate, the Mauritian Prime Minister described the expulsion of Chagosans as a crime against humanity. While the resolution is not legally binding, it carries significant political weight since the ruling came from the UN's highest court and the Assembly vote reflects world opinion. The resolution also has immediate practical consequences. The UN and its specialized agencies, and all other international organizations are now bound, as a matter of UN law, to support the decolonization of Mauritius even if the UK claim that it has no doubt about its sovereignty. Biodiversity. The country is home to some of the world's rarest plants and animals, but human habitation and the introduction of non-native species have threatened its indigenous flora and fauna. Due to its volcanic origin, age, isolation, and its unique terrain, Mauritius is home to a diversity of flora and fauna not usually found in such a small area. Before the Portuguese arrival in 1507, there were no terrestrial mammals on the island. This allowed the evolution of a number of flightless birds and large reptile species. The arrival of man saw the introduction of invasive alien species and the rapid destruction of habitat and the loss of much of the endemic flora and fauna. Less than 2% of the native forest now remains, concentrated in the Black River Gorges National Park in the southwest, the Bamboo Mountain Range in the southeast, and the Mocha-Port Louis Ranges in the northwest. There are some isolated mountains, Kortegaard, Le Morne Brabant, and several offshore islands with remnants of coastal and mainland diversity. Over 100 species of plants and animals have become extinct and many more are threatened. Conservation activities began in the 1980s with the implementation of programs for the reproduction of threatened bird and plant species as well as habitat restoration in the national parks and nature reserves. In 2011, the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development issued the Mauritius Environment Outlook report which recommended that St. Brandon be declared a marine protected area. In the President's report of the Mauritian Wildlife Foundation dated March 2016, St. Brandon is declared an official MWF project in order to promote the conservation of the atoll. The Mauritian Flying Fox is the only remaining mammal endemic to the island, and has been severely threatened in recent years due to the government-sanctioned culling introduced in November 2015 due to the belief that they were a threat to fruit plantations. Prior to 2015, the lack of severe cyclone had seen the fruit bat population increase and the status of the species was then changed by the UCAN from endangered to vulnerable in 2014. October 2018 saw the authorization of the cull of 20% of the fruit bat population, amounting to 13,000 of the estimated 65,000 fruit bats remaining, although their status had already reverted to endangered due to the previous year's culls. The dodo. When it was discovered, Mauritius was the home of a previously unknown species of bird, the dodo, descendants of a type of pigeon which settled in Mauritius over 4 million years ago. With no predators to attack them, they had lost their ability to fly. Arabs became the first humans to set foot on Mauritius, followed by Portuguese around 1505. The island quickly became a stopover for ships engaged in the spice trade. Weighing up to 50 pounds, 23 kilograms, the dodo was a welcome source of fresh meat for the sailors. Large numbers of dodos were killed for food. Later, when the Dutch used the island as a penal colony, new species were introduced to the island. Rats, pigs, and monkeys ate dodo eggs in the ground nests. The combination of human exploitation and introduced species significantly reduced the dodo population. Within 100 years of the arrival of humans on Mauritius, the once abundant dodo became a rare bird. The last one was killed in 1681. The dodo is prominently featured as a heraldic supporter of the national coat of arms of Mauritius. Environment and climate. The environment in Mauritius is typically tropical in the coastal regions with forests in the mountainous areas. Seasonal cyclones are destructive to its flora and fauna, although they recover quickly. Mauritius ranked second in an air quality index released by the World Health Organization in 2011. Situated near the Tropic of Capricorn, Mauritius has a tropical climate. There are 2 seasons, a warm humid summer from November to April, with a mean temperature of 24.7 degrees Celsius, 76.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And a relatively cool dry winter from June to September with a mean temperature of 20.4 degrees Celsius, 68.7 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature difference between the seasons is only 4.3 degrees Celsius, 7.7 degrees Fahrenheit. The warmest months are January and February with average day maximum temperature reaching 29.2 degrees Celsius, 84.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And the coolest months are July and August with average overnight minimum temperatures of 16.4 degrees Celsius, 61.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Annual rainfall ranges from 900 mm, 35 in, on the coast to 1,500 mm, 59 in, on the Central Plateau. Although there is no marked rainy season, most of the rainfall occurs in summer months. Sea temperature in the lagoon varies from 22 to 27 degrees Celsius, 72 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit. The Central Plateau is much cooler than the surrounding coastal areas and can experience as much as double the rainfall. The prevailing trade winds keep the east side of the island cooler and bring more rain. Occasional tropical cyclones generally occur between January and March and tend to disrupt the weather for about 3 days, bringing heavy rain. Politics. The politics of Mauritius take place in a framework of a parliamentary representative democratic republic, in which the president is the head of state and the prime minister is the head of government, assisted by a council of ministers. Mauritius has a multi-party system. Executive power is exercised by the government. Legislative power is vested in both the government and the National Assembly. The National Assembly is Mauritius's unicameral legislature, which was called the Legislative Assembly until 1992, when the country became a republic. It consists of 70 members, 62 elected for 4-year terms in multi-member constituencies and 8 additional members, known as best losers, appointed by the Electoral Service Commission to ensure that ethnic and religious minorities are equitably represented. The UN Human Rights Committee, UNHRC, which monitors member states' compliance with the International Covenant on Political and Civil Rights, ICCR, has criticized the country's best loser system following a complaint by a local youth and trade union movement. The president is elected for a 5-year term by the parliament. The island of Mauritius is divided into 20 constituencies that return 3 members each, while Rodrigues is a single constituency that returns 2 members. After a general election, the Electoral Supervisory Commission may nominate up to 8 additional members with a view to correct any imbalance in the representation of ethnic minorities in parliament. This system of nominating members is commonly called the best loser system. The political party or party alliance that wins the majority of seats in parliament forms the government. Its leader becomes the prime minister, who selects the cabinet from elected members of the assembly, except for the attorney general, who may not be an elected member of the assembly. The political party or alliance which has the second largest majority forms the official opposition, and its leader is normally nominated by the President of the Republic as the leader of the opposition. The Assembly elects a Speaker, a Deputy Speaker and a Deputy Chairman of committees as some of its first tasks. Mauritius is a democracy with a government elected every 5 years. The most recent National Assembly election was held on December 10, 2014 in all the 20 mainland constituencies, and in the constituency covering the island of Rodrigues. Elections have tended to be a contest between 2 major coalitions of parties. The 2006 to 2014 Ibrahim Index of African Governance ranked Mauritius first in good governance. According to the 2017 Democracy Index compiled by the Economist Intelligence Unit that measures the state of democracy in 167 countries, Mauritius ranks 16th worldwide and is the only African-related country with full democracy. Military. All military, police, and security functions in Mauritius are carried out by 10,000 active duty personnel under the Commissioner of Police. The 8,000-member National Police Force is responsible for domestic law enforcement. The 1,400-member Special Mobile Force, SMF, and the 688-member National Coast Guard are the only 2 paramilitary units in Mauritius. Both units are composed of police officers on lengthy rotations to those services. Foreign relations. Mauritius has strong and friendly relations with various African, American, Asian, European and Oceania countries. Considered part of Africa geographically, Mauritius has friendly relations with African states in the region, particularly South Africa, by far its largest continental trading partner. Mauritian investors are gradually entering African markets, notably Madagascar, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. The country's political heritage and dependence on Western markets have led to close ties with the European Union and its member states, particularly France. Relations with India is very strong for both historical and commercial reasons. Mauritius established diplomatic relations with China in April 1972 and was forced to defend this decision, along with naval contracts with the USSR in the same year. Mauritius is a member of the World Trade Organization, the Commonwealth of Nations Louisiana Francophonie, the African Union, the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC, the Indian Ocean Commission, COMESA, and formed the Indian Ocean Rim Association. Legal system. Laws governing the Mauritian penal system are derived partly from French civil law and British common law. The crime rate reduced from 4.3 per 1,000 population in 2009 to 3.6 per 1,000 population in 2010. The Constitution of Mauritius states that for purposes of separation of powers, the judiciary is independent. The provisional charge, part of criminal procedure law since 1852, is a practice that allows anyone suspected of a crime to be detained, sometimes for up to 2 years, before being charged. In 1994, the police detained the editor-in-chief and a journalist of a weekly magazine for having unlawfully published secret news. The chairman of the company was also arrested. In 1995, the Supreme Court found the provisional charge to be null and void, as the offense set out on the provisional charge publishing secret news was not known to the law. Sodomy is illegal in Mauritius, be it for heterosexuals or homosexuals. According to an unofficial translation of Section 250 of the Mauritius Criminal Code of 1838, any person who is guilty of the crime of sodomy shall be liable to penal servitude for a term not exceeding 5 years. In 2017, the government stated it would not repeal Section 250, but instead announced it would address the issue after further consideration. In practice, the law is hardly enforced against consenting male adults. Mauritius holds an annual gay pride since 2005. Demographics. The estimated resident population of the Republic of Mauritius was 1,271,301 as at June 22, 2019. As at mid-2018, the female population outnumbered the male population by 13,169. The population on the island of Mauritius is 1,222,268, and that of Rodrigues Island is 43,035. Agaléga and St. Brandon had an estimated total population of 274. Mauritius has the highest population density in Africa. Subsequent to a constitutional amendment in 1982, there is no need for Mauritians to reveal their ethnic identities for the purpose of population census. Official statistics on ethnicity are not available. The 1972 census was the last one to measure ethnicity. Mauritius is a multi-ethnic society, drawn from Indian, African, Chinese and European, mostly French, origin. Religion. According to the 2011 census conducted by Statistics Mauritius, 48.5% of the Mauritian population follows Hinduism, mostly by Harris with Tamil, Telugu and Marathi minorities, followed by Christianity, 32.7%, Islam, 17.2%, and other religions, 0.7%. 0.7% reported themselves as non-religious and 0.1% did not answer. Mauritius is the only country in Africa to have a Hindu plurality. An officially secular state, Mauritius is a religiously diverse nation, with freedom of religion being enshrined as a constitutional right. The culture of the Mauritian people is reflected in the various religious festivities that are celebrated throughout the year, some of which are recognized as public holidays. Languages. The Mauritian constitution makes no mention of an official language. The constitution only mentions that the official language of the National Assembly is English. However, any member can also address the chair in French. English and French are generally considered to be de facto national and common languages of Mauritius, as they are the languages of government administration, courts, and business. The Constitution of Mauritius is written in English, while some laws, such as the Civil Code and Criminal Code, are in French. The Mauritian currency features the Latin script, Tamil script and Devanagari script. The Mauritian population is multilingual. While Mauritian Creole is the mother tongue of most Mauritians, most people are also fluent in English and French. They tend to switch languages according to the situation. French and English are favored in educational and professional settings, while Asian languages are used mainly in music, religious and cultural activities. The media and literature are primarily in French. The Creole language, which is French-based with some additional influences, is spoken by the majority of the population as a native language. The Creole languages which are spoken in different islands of the country are more or less similar. Mauritian Creole, Rodrigues Creole, Agaléga Creole and Chagos Creole are spoken by people from the islands of Mauritius, Rodrigues, Agaléga, and Chagos. Some ancestral languages that are also spoken in Mauritius include Bhojpuri, Chinese, Hindi, Marathi, Tamil, Telugu, and Urdu. Bhojpuri, which was widely spoken as mother tongue, has been decreasing over the years. According to the 2011 census, there was a decrease in the use of Bhojpuri at home. It was spoken by 5% of the population compared to 12% in 2000. School students must learn English and French. They also have to opt for an Asian language or Mauritian Creole. The medium of instruction varies from school to school but is usually Creole, French, and English. Education. The education system in Mauritius consists of pre-primary, primary, secondary and tertiary sectors. The education structure consists of 2 to 3 years of pre-primary school, 6 years of primary schooling leading to the primary school achievement certificate, 5 years of secondary education leading to the school certificate, and 2 years of higher secondary ending with the higher school certificate. Secondary schools have college as part of their title. The government of Mauritius provides free education to its citizens from pre-primary to tertiary level. In 2013, government expenditure on education was estimated at about Rs 13,584 million, representing 13% of total expenditure. As of January 2017, the government has introduced changes to the education system with the 9-year Continuous Basic Education Program, which abolished the Certificate of Primary Education, CPE. The O-level and A-level examinations are carried out by the University of Cambridge through University of Cambridge International Examinations. The tertiary education sector includes universities and other technical institutions in Mauritius. The country has 2 main public universities, are the University of Mauritius and the University of Technology, in addition to the Université des Mascarenes, founded in 2012, and the Open University Mauritius. These 4 public universities and several other technical institutes and higher education colleges are tuition-free for students as of 2019. The adult literacy rate was estimated at 92.7% in 2015. Economy. Since independence from Britain in 1968, Mauritius has developed from a low-income, agriculture-based economy to an upper-middle-income diversified economy, based on tourism, textiles, sugar, and financial services. The economic history of Mauritius since independence has been called the Mauritian miracle in the success of Africa. Romer, 1992, Frankel, 2010, Stieglitz, 2011. In recent years, information and communication technology, seafood, hospitality and property development, healthcare, renewable energy, and education and training have emerged as important sectors, attracting substantial investment from both local and foreign investors. Mauritius has no exploitable fossil fuel reserves and so relies on petroleum products to meet most of its energy requirements. Local and renewable energy sources are biomass, hydro, solar and wind energy. Mauritius has one of the largest exclusive economic zones in the world, and in 2012 the government announced its intention to develop the marine economy. Mauritius is ranked high in terms of economic competitiveness, a friendly investment climate, good governance and a free economy. The gross domestic product, PPP, was estimated at $29.187 billion in 2018, and GDP, PPP, per capita was over $22,909, the second highest in Africa. Mauritius has an upper middle income economy, according to the World Bank in 2011. The World Bank's 2019 Ease of Doing Business Index ranks Mauritius 20th worldwide out of 190 economies in terms of ease of doing business. According to the Mauritian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the country's challenges are heavy reliance on a few industry sectors, high brain drain, scarcity of skilled labor, aging population and inefficient public companies and parastatal bodies. Mauritius has built its success on a free market economy. According to the 2018 Index of Economic Freedom, Mauritius is ranked as having the 3rd most free economy in the world. The report's ranking of 183 countries is based on measures of economic openness, regulatory efficiency, rule of law, and competitiveness. Financial services. According to the Financial Services Commission, financial and insurance activities contributed to 11.1% of the country's GDP in 2018. Over the years, Mauritius has been positioning itself as the preferred hub for investment into Africa due to its strategic location between Asia and Africa, hybrid regulatory framework, ease of doing business, investment protection treaties, non-double taxation treaties, highly qualified and multilingual workforce, political stability, low crime rate coupled with modern infrastructure and connectivity. It is home to a number of international banks, legal firms, corporate services, investment funds and private equity funds. Financial products and services includes private banking, global business, insurance and reinsurance, limited companies, protected cell companies, trust and foundation, investment banking, global headquarter administration. Despite being tagged as a tax haven by the press due to its low tax regime, the country has built up a solid reputation by making use of best practices and adopting a strong legal and regulatory framework to demonstrate its compliance with international demands for greater transparency. In June 2015, Mauritius adhered to the Multilateral Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters, and currently has an exchange information mechanism with 127 jurisdictions. Mauritius is a founding member of the Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group and has been at the forefront in the fight against money laundering and other forms of financial crime. The country has adopted exchange of information on an automatic basis under the Common Reporting Standard and the Foreign Accounts Tax Compliance Act. Mauritius is not on the European Union blacklist. Furthermore, Mauritius appears on the OECD whitelist of jurisdictions that have substantially implemented the internationally agreed tax standards. The OECD whitelist looks at jurisdictions from multiple angles: tax transparency, fair taxation, the implementation of OECD BEPS measures and substance requirements for zero-tax countries. Tourism. Mauritius is a major tourist destination. The tourism sector is the fourth contributor to the Mauritian economy. The island nation enjoys a tropical climate with clear warm sea waters, beaches, tropical fauna and flora complemented by a multi-ethnic and cultural population. The forecast of tourist arrivals for the year 2019 is maintained at 1,450,000, representing an increase of 3.6% over the figure of 1,399,408 in 2018. Mauritius currently has two UNESCO World Heritage Sites, namely, Apurvasi Ghat and Le Mornay Cultural Landscape. Additionally, Black River Gorges National Park is currently in the UNESCO tentative list. Transport. Since 2005, public bus transport in Mauritius is free of charge for students, people with disabilities and senior citizens. There are currently no railways in Mauritius, former privately owned industrial railways having been abandoned. Harbour. The harbour of Port Louis handles international trade as well as a cruise terminal. International Airport. The sole international airport for civil aviation is Sirsiwusagar Ramgoolam International Airport, which also serves as the home operating base for the national airline Air Mauritius. The airport authority inaugurated a new passenger terminal in September 2013. Another airport is the Sir Gaëtan Duval Airport in Rodrigues. Traffic problem. Mauritius has a serious traffic problem due to the high number of road users, particularly car drivers. To solve the traffic congestion issue, the government has embarked on the Metro Express project. The rail starts from Port Louis up to Curbipe. The first phase of the project will end in 2019 while the second phase will end in 2021. Information and Communication Technology. The information and communication technology sector has contributed to 5.7% of its GDP in 2016. Since 2016, Mauritius has participated in international competitions led by Cyberstorm.mu. They organized the 2016 and 2017 Google Coding in Mauritius, leading to 2 finalists and 1 grand prize winner. Additionally, they have participated in the Internet Engineering Task Force (IETF) hackathon where they worked on TLS 1.3, HTTP 451 and SSH. Culture. Art. Prominent Mauritian painters include Vaco Basic, Unreal Asidiner and Malcolm Nachazul. Gabriel Wee is a prominent illustrator and graphic designer. Architecture. The distinctive architecture of Mauritius reflects the island nation's history as a colonial trade base connecting Europe with the East. Styles and forms introduced by Dutch, French, and British settlers from the 17th century onward, mixed with influences from India and East Africa, resulted in a unique hybrid architecture of international historic, social, and artistic significance. Mauritian structures present a variety of designs, materials, and decorative elements that are unique to the country and inform the historical context of the Indian Ocean and European colonialism. Decades of political, social, and economic change have resulted in the routine destruction of Mauritian architectural heritage. Between 1960 and 1980, the historic homes of the island's high grounds, known locally as Campagna, disappeared at alarming rates. More recent years have witnessed the demolition of plantations, residences, and civic buildings as they have been cleared or drastically renovated for new developments to serve an expanding tourism industry. The capital city of Port Louis remained relatively unchanged until the mid-1990s, yet now reflects the irreversible damage that has been inflicted on its built heritage. Rising land values are pitted against the cultural value of historic structures in Mauritius, while the prohibitive costs of maintenance and the steady decline in traditional building skills make it harder to invest in preservation. The general populace historically lived in what are termed Creole houses. Literature. Prominent Mauritian writers include Marie-Thérèse Humbert, Malcolm de Choiseul, Ananda Devi, Shanaz Patel, Karl Torabulli, J. M. G. Leclasio, Akil Gope, and Devarassamy. J. M. G. Leclasio, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2008, is of Mauritian heritage and holds dual French-Mauritian citizenship. The island plays host to the Le Prince Maurice Prize. In keeping with the island's literary culture, the prize alternates on a yearly basis between English-speaking and French-speaking writers. Music. The major musical genres of Mauritius are Sega and its fusion genre, Sege, Bhojpuri folk songs, Indian movie music especially Bollywood, and classical music mainly Western classical music and Indian classical music. Cuisine. The cuisine of Mauritius is a combination of Indian, Creole, French, and Chinese, with many dishes unique to the island. Spices are also a big part of Mauritian cuisine. Holidays and festivals. The public holidays of Mauritius involve the blending of several cultures from Mauritius's history. There are Hindu festivals, Chinese festivals, Muslim festivals, as well as Christian festivals. There are 15 annual public holidays in Mauritius. All the public holidays related to religious festivals have dates that vary from year to year except for Christmas. Other festivals such as Holi, Raksha Bandhan, Père pilgrimage also enrich the cultural landscape of Mauritius. Sports. The most popular sport in Mauritius is football and the national team is known as the Dodos or Club M. Other popular sports in Mauritius include cycling, table tennis, horse racing, badminton, volleyball, basketball, handball, boxing, judo, karate, taekwondo, weightlifting, bodybuilding and athletics. Water sports include swimming, sailing, scuba diving, windsurfing and kitesurfing. Horse racing, which dates from 1812 when the Champ de Mars racecourse was inaugurated, remains popular. The country hosted the 2nd, 1985, 5th, 2003, and 10th editions, 2019, of the Indian Ocean Island Games. Mauritius won its first Olympic medal at the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing when boxer Bruno Julie won the bronze medal. In golf, the former Mauritius Open and the current Afrasia Bank Mauritius Open have been part of the European Tour. Bank Mauritius Open have been part of the European Tour. Bank Mauritius Open have been part of the European Tour. Bank Mauritius Open have been part of the European Tour. Bank Mauritius Open have been part of the European Tour. Bank Mauritius Open have been part of the European Tour. Bank Mauritius Open have been part of the European Tour. Bank Mauritius Open have been